been to more countries than you can remember?
Yeah, I've been a bunch of countries. You know, I was going from a strong military background to civilian now, and I'm transitioning at the same time.
What drives you? What makes it happen?
Anytime I get like any kind of negativity in life, all the things I've been through and stuff, I just put that like chip on my shoulder.
What is the craziest thing you've seen doing a home inspection?
They had a very interesting room.
Welcome to the Get Above the Line podcast. And today, got a special guest, Christion House. He's the owner of H2H Inspectors and Alpha Radon Remediation.
Yes, sir.
And he's got 12 years active duty in the Air Force. The skill sets he's obtained in service are cryogenic production.
Cryogenic production and maintenance, making liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Fuel servicing, storage systems, environmental and safety, logistics, and operational management.
Right.
You lived overseas for 10 years, mainly in Japan and Europe. You've been to more countries than you can remember.
Yeah, I've been a bunch of countries.
You got your home inspector's license in 2016 and started full-time in 2017. And you started doing radon mitigation as a side hustle in 2019. Man, that's a heck of that's a heck of an intro, man.
I should add a couple extra things. I don't know. Is this content sponsored by Essentia? The water? Are we being sponsored?
Not yet.
Sponsored by On Nicotine?
No, we should be.
I'm going to move these out of the way then.
We
won't talk
should
about them anymore.
So you were in the Air Force
right
for
out of high
12
school.
Years.
Oh yeah, I seen the writing on the wall. It's probably like my junior year. I was like, oh man, I don't have what it takes to go to college. Like oldest of 5, and you know, growing up poor with you know, a bunch of Mountain Dew drinkers, like my parents down in Lincoln County.
Oh, Lincoln County.
Down in Lincoln County, Kentucky. So the writing on the wall, parents kind of set the expectations like, hey, you want to go to college, you can pay for college, but there's 4 others behind you. So you got to figure something out. God bless my parents, though. They always supportive. But the out for me, you know, growing up in, you know, below middle class was, shoot, I got to do something else. And the military was one of those outlets, unfortunately.
So what pointed you towards the military?
One of my uncles made a suggestion, because I was kind of like the black wolf of the family. I was always a troublemaker growing up, getting suspended from school, things of that nature.
What'd you get suspended for?
Fighting, some of it.
What was the worst thing? Let's just go right to that.
The middle school, it was probably middle school. I don't even want to discuss it because it's just like, it's horrible. But fighting and then picking on kids on the bus. I was a little bit of a troublemaker, and I didn't get my stuff together until I got my my driver's license, and that's when I started behaving.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of it had to
like
deal with.
For me.
I got my driver's license, and where I got 3 little sisters and a little brother. My oldest little sister was like everywhere with me, so I had like no choice but to behave, because I was like,
okay.
I got my baby sister who later turned into my best friend, and so just driving around with her, it kind of straightened me up and started doing better in school. Growing up in that kind of environment, as far as, you know, spending the summers and the spring and summers, like chopping wood to heat the house, being on the road with Dad, working in commercial construction with him, I was like, man, I don't want this kind of lifestyle. I want to do something different. And at the time, nobody was really going to the military at the time. I think my graduating class in high school was like 400 kids. And there's only 3 of us right out of high school that went to the military.
Wow.
So 2 of us went to Air Force, and I think one of the other guys went to Marine Corps. And I was glad I did, because I learned in tech school in the Air Force, like I did not have the study skills I needed. I didn't learn those study skills until later in life. Like I thought high school did a good job teaching me my study skills.
Right.
Nah, they just got me through. Even though I was making good grades, going through tech school in the military was hard for me. I had to like really buckle down, learn my skill sets and study. And it was a really good eye-opening experience, because I was not going to make it into college like right out of high school. I would have, flunked out. Who knows? Been working for the family business, working with Dad.
You said a couple things there that, like, I wasn't in the military, but I haven't met anyone or worked with anyone that was in the military that I don't like working with.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's something that gets put into people in the military that a lot of people don't get. Then the other connection that I made in what you said was chopping firewood and working hard and, you know, putting all that labor in. And I think that that's another thing that I connect with people, is like when kids are raised like that, they have a different approach. Like a lot of that's missing in the world today.
Yeah, like some grit.
Like that grit. And like,
yeah.
I mean, I would even go as far as my grandfather. I mean, he was the coolest guy in the woods, like had this place out in the middle of nowhere. I could call it nothing short of gender shaming. Like he would call me a little, I mean, and I know that's not okay today, but
Yeah, exactly.
like he'd be like, you're acting like a little girl.
Yeah.
You
Your
know,
hands
like
are
it was
soft.
like, your hands are soft.
Oh,
Why
yeah.
are your hands in your pockets?
Yeah.
Like it was always like, if I wasn't working all the time and not complaining, it was a thing. And it was like, I always felt like if I didn't work, I would not be invited back. I was not allowed in his space if I didn't work my ass off.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate that. And it really says a lot about you. So was it right out of the military? What did you went right when you got done with the military?
So got it done in the military in 2016. Bob Safai, I was living in Lithuania at the time with my son's mother. And she was a big reason, big push for why I got out of the military. And so I didn't know what I really wanted to do. And at the time, we were living in Lithuania, in Palanga. And when that time came when I was done with the military, and I was putting my CV, my resume out there as far as to find like some local work and things, wasn't finding a whole lot of luck with my skill sets. And then on top of it all, wasn't fluent in Russian, wasn't fluent in Lithuanian. I picked up languages through my travels, but I
Right.
never became fluent in anything.
Right.
So I really seen the limitations on, even though with my skill sets, my work ethic and stuff, that I wasn't going to be able to provide for my family overseas.
Right.
And at the time, the relationship was starting to take a downward turn, especially once I got out of the service. The relationship with my son's mother started going down. And I kind of seen the writing on the wall. So I bought a property in Lexington. Never lived in Lexington, Kentucky before. So I started looking up in areas all over the states. Like, where could I go? I was even considering Atlanta, Georgia, pretty strong. I think a couple spots in Texas and a few spots in Florida at the
You said
time.
you hadn't been to Lexington?
Never lived in Lexington before. So so moving to Lexington in 2017, that's like the first time like living in Lexington.
Yeah.
So I had no connections, nothing, and bought a house sight unseen in Lexington. Had a great real estate agent at the time who I met through, I can't remember what the popular website was at the time, maybe Realtor or something.
Truly.
Maybe that one.
Who was it?
Trina Hinkle.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, real good agent. So she hooked me up. Bought a house sight unseen, and paid $800 for a home inspection. And when I got the home inspection report back, the grammar was bad, the photos were bad. Trying to get a hold of the gentleman who was doing home inspections was difficult, even like through text message. And
Yeah.
granted, I was living overseas, and we had like a 6-hour time difference at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I got some questions, like some major concerns, and I was already pretty familiar with real estate and properties and homes and systems at this point from working commercial construction with my father. I was really disappointed for the quality of the money that I paid and the quality of service I was getting in return, that the home inspection industry kind of fell into my lap at that time.
Yeah.
And so, I was in this transition, getting out of the service, going from somebody who was, incredibly busy, valued, to being essentially like a nobody and having, minimal direction, minimal insight into, what I want to do. My personal relationship with my son's mother's failing, feeling like a loser, and it's like, man, what am I going to do? And I had a chunk of change. I was sitting on just a little bit of save money, thank God, that would get me by,
Right.
for like 2 years. I was just like, screw it, let me look into home inspection.
That's awesome.
And at that time, I found like some of these veteran-friendly franchises, and one of these large national brands showed up on there. So I was like, oh, let me give them a shot. And man, a lot of hard lessons learned with that, being a former franchisee with a large national home inspection brand. But hit the ground running hard and got my license in 2016, and then started doing home inspections full time in 2017.
That's really cool. So it's based on the fact that you got like an outdated report with
Just below
with
average.
bad communication,
Grammar was bad, misspellings
bad
in the report.
grammar.
In the
Probably no
demographics.
tech. It probably took a week to get it.
Yeah, I mean, he was. It took him a few days to get back to me, but
Yeah.
I mean, he was. He's not in business anymore, so for good reason. But
So how long did it take you to start making money in the inspecting business?
shoot, I didn't get my first paid job. Didn't happen for over 4 months.
So you signed up to be a franchisee. You spent 4 months of trying to get business.
Trying to get business, and
How'd you get your first inspection?
wasn't even the recommendations from the franchisee. It was because that was one thing I learned, Bob Safai, through this process. Just because, when you get into the service industry, just because, say, if you're going to be a franchisee or you get in with a large, like, corporate service industry, just because there's the name there does not mean that you're going to immediately get business at all.
100%.
And when you're in the service industry, that's something a lot of people fail to realize, especially my own fault. I mean, again, I was naive, came out something in the early 30s. at the time, had no idea, completely disconnected from, civilian life and the corporate culture and all that stuff, how important it is to put your name out there, and people aren't going to give you a shot, with just a national brand behind you.
Right.
That doesn't matter. They got to see you, know you, like you, trust you, and they got to, meet you and, give you those opportunities. And some of the first opportunities I got, going to a number of open houses, and then social media.
Yeah.
So like some of the marketing strategies that the national franchise that I was part of had in place was antiquated information.
Right.
And it was, and they, like, the way they sold it to me, and again, I was overseas. I wasn't even stateside. So I didn't have like much to go off of.
Right.
Things of that nature. I talked to other franchisees that they told me to contact who were like, they were drinking the Kool-Aid. They were definitely drinking the Kool-Aid hard.
Right.
Right. Because they were getting paid to say nice things about the franchise.
Well, and you probably didn't know the right questions to ask at the time either.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
you say, right. Like, if you went back and you asked those people the questions you have now, it'd probably be a totally different situation, because they probably wouldn't have been able to answer, and you'd been like, bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, because I think that's one thing to point out. Like, when people are getting started in a new business, you don't know what you should be asking. You don't know what you should be asking.
Exactly.
You don't know what you should be.
And at the time, 2016, 17, there was some information out there, because I did a lot of research like on YouTube and things like that, because those platforms were prevalent, but there wasn't as much social media content in service industries, so to speak, as there is now. There's like so much information out there now. Like, you don't, is it a good idea to have a mentor? Sure. Do you have to have one? No. Do you have to be part of a franchise? No. Can you be a self-starter and go get it yourself? Yes. Can you self-learn? Yes. How much are you willing to sacrifice?
Right.
The more you sacrifice, the more you can get back.
Right.
And, through a lot of those sacrifices, and then moving into Lexington, and then going to open houses, and just taking a lot of no's, going to offices, trying to do presentations, joining professional networking groups, and just like rinse and repeat my commercials and my communication skill sets. I was going from a strong military background to civilian now, and I'm transitioning at the same time.
That's
and
really
I
cool.
and I have to learn how to adjust my vernacular and how I'm talking, how I speak to things, like how I'm speaking to people.
It's really
not
cool.
that I'm aggressive about how I'm speaking to people or anything, but now I have to sell myself, where I came from an environment where I didn't have to.
No, you just had to stay in the box.
Yeah,
Like,
just do a good job.
Do a good job.
Yep, exactly.
That's really, really cool. One of the podcasts that I had seen the other day was Jordan Belfort and Tucker Carlson. And I'm telling you what, like, ever since Tucker's been on his own,
He's fun. He's an interesting individual.
He's so authentic. Like, he's like super smart and so authentic. Well, anyway, he's got Jordan Belfort on there. I've seen The Wolf of Wall Street, and I love the movie. Yeah. And, I think I've even read his book, right?
Yeah.
The Straight Line Selling System or whatever. But he was telling his story about how he got in, or how the movie was made, and how he wrote this book. But he was in prison with not
big
Cheech,
marijuana
not
guys.
Cheech, the other guy. Yeah.
Okay, big marijuana guy.
Yeah, he's in there with him, and he's, they're in a cell together, and he starts telling his story. Chong was like, "That's the most interesting story I've ever heard in my life. You need to put that on paper. You need to get this on paper." So what made me think about that right just now was that he went to the library and got a book, and I wish I knew what the author's name was, but he started reading this book, and he's like, "That's how I want to write." So then he took the book, and he got a highlighter, and he highlighted how he was able to get his message across in the different ways that he structured his. That's how he learned to write.
Yeah.
So from that book, then he wrote 10 pages and sent it to a book publisher, and the book publisher will write me 10 more pages, and it took a couple of months or whatever. Then they're like, "You've got a hit here." Based on him stopping, like you did, like you had to stop and like change your skill set from something you did before to your new self.
Yeah,
and,
going from a POS, like a horrible human being, to like, oh, how am I going to be a good person and like market this now?
Yeah, right. I mean, but that's not the part that I connected to. But I'm saying, I mean, like that's the thing to attach to, because like whether you
you can reinvent yourself,
whether you have a mentor, whether you don't. Now, I think that there's ways to speed up progress, right? But people that don't have that, like, the progress is going to go slow no matter what. No matter if you're working with someone, you're not working with someone, whether you're doing it by yourself. Like, you got to have that inner, like, push to, like, make those things happen and make that change happen, especially when you're on an island all by yourself.
Yeah, because entrepreneurship, being in business for yourself is the loneliest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Like, even some of the journeys I've been by myself on, I've never felt as lonely as going into business on my own.
Man.
It's the loneliest thing I've ever done. And I've been through some hard shit, and I've been through some hard stuff in my past. This has been lonely. It's not been the most difficult thing, but it's been very interesting.
Well, I know from the first time that we met, and I don't remember the first time we met, but I was sold the first time, or maybe it was your social media, like.
I think it was gently social media because I started posting on Facebook a lot more.
Like you would take. And that's the thing. It's like I can always spot in other people's business like what they should be doing on social media, and then like mine seems so boring, right? And it's being able to like spot like I think somebody said it as like the Kardashian effect. Like until the Kardashians, nobody like went behind the scenes, and now everybody expects the behind the scenes look.
Right.
Like that's what they want to see. They want to see, you know, what other people don't see. And I think you've attached to that very quickly with your business. You know, whereas. You know, I'm sure you see some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But like you could take something mediocre and make it into something crazy just to share it with people. And I think that like that realness has really, it really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And I know it's resonated with a lot of other people. The other thing you did a lot was you would take the agent that was at the open house, or not at the open house, but at the inspection, and you make a big post about that agent.
Yeah.
And then the agent shares that information, you know?
Yeah.
So now you've got them disseminating your brand out into the world. And I thought that was genius too. And there's like people like, I feel like people like called you, they may not do a lot of business, but they called you because they wanted you to post a picture of them.
Yeah.
The agents did.
Yeah.
It didn't have anything to do with their clients.
Exactly.
It was like getting on your news feed. So
and that brings up a great point too, because you know, with again, going back to service industries, like look at the demographics, like what your competition's doing, but also pay attention to a lot of the things that they're not doing.
Yeah.
And so many people get hung up, I've noticed, with awkwardness. You know, they don't want to come across awkward. They don't want to come across, they want to be, you know, they want to be authentic, but they want to be professional. They want to get it right the first time. They don't want to stutter. They don't want to say the ums, all that other stuff. It's like, no, get it out there. If you're uncomfortable in front of the camera,
that's the magic.
If you're uncomfortable with the process, just put that out there and own it.
Right.
Because, you know, nobody's going to make fun of you for owning it.
Right.
At the same time, because a lot of people don't do it.
Yeah.
They can't embrace that awkwardness.
I've created a persona for myself in a different way than you did. Mine wasn't the behind the scenes. Mine was, I just got in the middle of a deal, and now your parents aren't going to list their house with you. They're going to list it with me.
Yeah.
And that caused a lot of
drama.
I got a lot of back from it. You know, like that's my persona, is that I'm out taking business from other people.
Yeah.
And in my world, like how I deal with that is that I feel like I have a duty for the clients and to help them get the best results, and I feel like I can deliver those.
Yeah.
That's my mindset. So the persona that I created is based on their reaction to how I do business, but how I do business is to help people and to do the right thing. So It's like,
and if even people are like complaining about you, that's a good thing, because then they're talking about you.
Until I started putting videos out, people didn't connect with me as a person. They didn't even know me, and they took right now I'm just speaking of real estate agents, but also like, I have a pretty big following on social media, but I never really connected with people until I started putting videos out. And so, and the more regularly I do it, I just challenge myself to put one out every day for 30 days. I skipped 2 days, but I've been in it for like 11 days now.
Congrats.
But I feel like that piece of it, like I'll get a call and they'll be like, yeah, you seem to know what you're talking about when it comes to this. And I saw your video and I'm like, man, this shit works for you like 24 hours a day. Like you don't even know where people are seeing it, where it's getting shared. You might see, you only got a couple hundred views on it, but then somebody makes a comment when you see them out at a store and they're like, man, that video was fire. And I'm like, you know, why didn't you say something? You know, like, so that video is just such a huge part of business now. We touched on the franchise thing for a minute. You recently haven't been doing business in Lexington, or you just started business back up.
Yeah. So I left. I was with a national franchise brand, and I left it. So seen through the smoke and mirrors and everything during the pandemic, and just wasn't happy with their leadership, their way forward, and then some of the aggressive marketing tactics that they had at the time. You know, they were like selling like, oh, it's only 11%. But then, you know, me not understanding to read the fine print as far as in the contract and things of that nature, didn't understand that, you know, there's a lot of preferred vendors. And then a lot of those preferred vendors are either owned or they got incredibly close connections with or relationships with. And so, like, end of the day, you know, a lot of my fees were coming out to be about 20 to 23% a month paying towards the franchise. And so some of those hard lessons learned, no minimal support as far as like SEO generation and like Google, and a lot of the processes and systems that they had in at the time were not geared towards my demographics. There was too many older older leadership in those positions that did not understand the power of like social media, the marketing, the Google, SEO generation.
Right.
They were wanting, us to utilize old marketing techniques from antiquated blogs as far as like, what is that called with the essays and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Some like just...
the simple stuff you were doing was crushing it.
Yeah.
The simple stuff you were doing was crushing it, and the franchise fees you were paying was not producing the results.
Wasn't producing the results.
The return on the investment.
Exactly. And what I was led to believe as far as, with the national brand that it was going to bring in business did not come to fruition.
Right.
In my area. And then something else I later discovered, there was 3 or 4 other franchisees in my market at the time that had failed. 3 of them failed. One guy just ended up leaving. And so any of the agents who remembered any of those people, I would run into periodically, they didn't have a particularly good opinion on. So, nobody told me that. I didn't learn about those things until I started getting into the system. And then when, trying to do the research on the background as far as, who these people were, it's hard to find that information out.
I did some research on
region.
you today. I've got some tips for you because you are connected to a lot of the old stuff.
Yeah.
I thought I spelled your name wrong the first time. I'm like, man, SEO would be tough with your name.
Yeah. Christian spelt with an O.
Yeah, Christion House is like, there's like all kinds of like recovery centers and churches, and there's like
tons.
50 million different things popped up. I'm like, where's my boy? Like he's not on here, right?
Yeah.
But I had the A in there instead of the O.
Right.
So then I was thinking about that, but then once you put the O in, I've got some solutions for you that I'll share with you when we're done.
Yeah,
I've got some things that will really help you because I've really that's something that from the day one. In fact, I was at Remax. That was where I started.
Yeah.
And they put me on probation. Because I didn't produce in the first 90 days or whatever. They're like, if the sales manager took me aside and he said, look, if you don't do anything in the next 90 days, we're going to have to let you go. I mean, it's a real funny story. Like, I probably do more than their whole office.
It's amazing how
I saw more than their whole office. But that's what I was doing the whole time. I was like I had created this like brand. I made this top 10 things of like, I still have it. It's still part of my bio, but it's not as like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. But it was my top 10. It was like, I study negotiations, and I'm always on time. I'm trying to think of all of them. And what I've learned later on is those are principles. Like principles are really important when you're in business. Like the things that guide you through your decisions.
Being persistent, yeah.
And people attach to being principled. Like when you have principles, you say, this is the way that I do things.
Yeah.
It's really important. But
I love that how you got a little bit of that negativity as far as that probation remark there, because I anytime I get like any kind of negativity in life, from all the things I've been through and stuff, I just put that like chip on my shoulder. And I remember, when I was first started in business and things weren't going my way and I wasn't getting a paid job. Again, I didn't get a paid job for over 4 months. I tapped into that anger a little bit, almost in a very selfish and wasn't very particularly healthy way as far as like, if I felt like I wasn't doing enough, I'd be just like, that's a chip on my shoulder. I'd be just like angry, and I'd just look at it and I'd be like, all right, let's just keep going. Let's just keep grinding this out and see what happens.
Some of the most successful people that I've come in contact with and I've asked questions to, like, what drives you, what makes it happen? I mean, 9 times out of 10, they can identify the chip within seconds. They're like, the reason why is because somebody said this to me.
Yeah.
Or the reason why is because this happened to me. Like when you started off by saying, that you got that home inspection, you were overseas, and it just wasn't what you expected, and that's what gave you the idea to get into the business and to think, coming into 2020, the COVID times or whatever, how many people bought houses sight unseen?
Right.
Like how many did you?
Bunches.
How many people did you come in contact with when you did home inspections, as opposed to prior to that? Because everybody was hanging out and all wanted to be around and in your space the whole time. And that probably changed it a lot, but you were prepared for that because that's something that drove you to get into the business in the first place.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Kind of like what Michael Jordan used to do. Like, he would just keep making stuff up in his head. Like, he'd take a little bit of negativity, you know, like when he play against some guys, you hear stories, and he just, like, make up stories in his head, and it's like, you know, I kind of do the same thing. It's like, is that weird?
It's
I'm
important.
Like, yeah. I do it in a healthy manner now. Like, at the time, my first 2 years, I was doing it in a very unhealthy manner. And now,
unhealthy.
Yeah.
I think the ways that it can be unhealthy is, like, the persona that I've created for myself. And in that chip, yes, it would force me to work harder and to spend more time and get more business. Like, what it did was it intimidated me from, like, socially interacting with people on the other side of the deal.
Imposter syndrome or whatever, kind of like what you're leading to.
Right. I feel like with that, it was like specifically, like, I feel like people have this certain perception of who I am and what I am. And right now, I just don't have time to deal with that. The thing that's the very most important in my business is bringing more agents into my space. Yeah. That's the very most important thing. Like, I've built this space, I've got the resources, I've got the support. It's different in the sense, you know, this is like, it would probably be compared to joining a franchise, but the difference is that I spend every single day making sure that the split that the agent has with my company provides value to them and helps them grow and helps them create more business. And I believe in my heart that someone will make more money working with me than working on their own. If you're a solo agent, you're still a team. You just do more. You're just trying to be great at a lot of things that you don't need to be great at.
Exactly.
All those tasks, you don't need to be great at that stuff. But then as the team grows, like, the expenses pile up, you know, in business, expenses are crazy. But in real estate, you know, being able to share the expenses and have the top software, not the stuff that's antiquated, but the stuff that really does
perform. Exactly.
But that's where, you know, we were saying, like, having that chip is really important, but sometimes you create that chip or that thing and it directs you the wrong way because it pushes me away from doing what's most important for my business, which is connecting with more agents and helping more agents be successful because I feel like they feel a certain way about me.
That chip, I've seen it, like, professionally, it's done a lot of good for me. Like, long-term, a lot of great things professionally. But, you know, the trauma I went through with my son's mother once we separated, I moved back to the States, she didn't come back with me. I seen that, you know, when I was ready to date and go on my personal life and trying to be like an effective romantic partner in my personal life, like that kind of trauma and that chip I had on my shoulder really just held me back for a few years.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm still like, because, you know, trying to date and things of that nature now, but still I kind of feel it a little bit still negatively affecting my personal life.
Right.
Because I've created so much, I've done so much on my own, and then through hiring the right people and delegating things out, you know, professionally, doing amazing, having a great time, having fun. But yeah, personally, still suffering a little bit through having too much of that chip and relying too much on that, and not being a very good romantic partner as far as having like that good relationship, that strong personal relationship that I desire.
At this point in my life, you know, I'm 48 years old,
still young,
but like I didn't get married to the right person until I was 45.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you say, you know, getting back into dating, like I never really was into dating. I was always into the grind. I was always into the hustle and always into the work, always into the growth and always into like me. And I've seen so many people over the period of my life, like be in relationships and be stuck in relationships and be like in a relationship because they have to be in a relationship and like all these things.
Yeah.
And like I'm in the best relationship of my entire life.
Congratulations.
And it's like, because I wasn't on the hunt and I never have been really my whole life. Yeah. But any advice I could give you, that would be it.
Yeah.
It's like the hunt is what kills it. I didn't know you were single, first of all, until the other day when they were talking about it. But I guess the interaction that you had with someone on the team or whatever. Yeah. But not with the interaction with someone on the team, with someone connected to someone on the team. I'm like, wait, I didn't know I was single. I didn't know a lot of stuff about you until I read your bio there either. But
and that's the thing too, is like I
could give you all kinds of advice. Yeah, like I got you, man.
Yeah, because it took me a couple of years to be like comfortable, like opening up
to it, right?
You know, as far as embracing some of those things and just owning it, and it's like there's nothing wrong with it, but it's also like taking that time and dealing with those things. So because it does honestly make me a better performer professionally as well, and trying to get control of like my personal life and taking responsibility for a lot of actions so I could be a better person personally, because I do want like a partner in crime, because I'm sure you see the value of having a partner in crime now and what she's brought to your life.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
that's kind of like what I want and what I'm like.
But it's ultimately like, I think it all goes back to like with that and with leadership in general. Like I think a lot of it has to do with leadership. I mean, like relationships have a lot to do with leadership. I mean, like you're in relationship with when you're a leader, and like I feel like a big part of my relationship is my personal growth or my like. It's not like I don't know how to put that, but I just know that there's plenty of time. There's plenty of time.
Yeah, I'm not in a rush.
There's plenty of time.
I'm not.
And you
I'm
keep
not in a
focusing.
rush.
You just stay focused on yourself, man.
The dating world. It's interesting
I
right
can't
now.
imagine. I can't imagine. I totally miss
yeah.
the whole online dating thing, and like I kind of feel like I'm pretty good at the online thing, and I always have been.
Yeah.
But I've never marketed myself in the dating world.
Yeah.
And like I mean, like I said, I've never really been on the other side of it where I'm the hunter. Like I've always put myself in positions where I'm the hunted.
Yeah.
You know, like
exactly, to be organically.
yeah, like I've always like just you know, I wouldn't say that I didn't intentionally end up connecting with someone, but I didn't do it in a way that was like putting my profile up online and you know, changing the headline and changing the photo and changing the bio. There was never a point like that.
Because I don't.
I find that really interesting.
I don't dabble, and I tell everybody on my teams too. Like, don't you know, mess around with the people that we work with. You know, and I have those same values and stuff too. Like I don't.
I grew up in a restaurant. It was my family's restaurant, and like that was like one of the rules. But it was ultimately my way of not being in relationship with any of the people that I slept with. You know what I mean? Like it was like, look, we can't do this if you can't keep it on the down low. Like you've got to keep it on the down low or we can't do it.
Right.
That was a condition that I set prior to. So that's how I worked. But I mean, meeting people that you work with, it's like, that's where you're at every day and all day. And it's like, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Because some of the people I network with, and they're like, hey, I want to introduce you to somebody. And I'm like, you know, no disrespect. I don't do that. Like, thank you, but I just don't want to go down that road. Just in case it doesn't work or something happens. I don't want none of that stuff. So I haven't.
That's interesting.
I haven't, dated anybody in the real estate community. I don't think that I can recall.
So you're just not willing to take risks yet.
Yeah, not willing to take those kind of risks.
But you would there's probably got to be a couple.
There's a couple.
You take a risk for.
Yeah, there's probably a couple I would. Yeah, but I got my.
I mean, it's good to say that you won't. Yeah. I mean, but at the end of the day,
I'm at a point in my life too where I've been married, been divorced, got a son out of wedlock, and I'm just sticking to my must-haves and can't stands. He's 10.
He's 10. Do you see your son or?
So 3 years in court. This was right before London got shut down. So my son lives in London, England, with his mother, and this was right before COVID shut down access to Europe in London. So all the restaurants were closed down. I was in court with her for 3 years to try to get more access to my son, and I lost like big time. So all I get's photos, school updates, and that's about it.
So you do get that.
So I get that. That's about it. And just interviewed a new legal team out in London. So I feel pretty good about them. And I didn't feel like they were trying to sell me on anything. They weren't particularly interested whether they had my business or not. But they were pretty optimistic as far as being purposefully alienated as a father that I could get more access and more rights to my son. Man. So that's also a pretty driving force. Yeah. I haven't seen him in a few years. And it's been tough swallowing that pill. So didn't think it could, I think I'm a good person and everything. Right. But then to, go to England and kind of, you hear the rumblings, a little bit of the social and the political dynamics of alienating fathers from their kids, almost purposeful. Yeah. And you hear it from a lot of other single dads and how a lot of these young men and some women too, lose their ass financially over these separations of the relationship, and the kids fall victim. And I was like, can't happen to me. Happened to me. Got my butt handed to me. Had a lot of negative things.
That's gotta make it tough in dating. Like when you said that earlier.
Yeah. The traumatic stuff, like going through that
part of it, like to think that like you put your trust in someone and had a child.
And just, purposefully taken away.
To have like that, have someone do that is like.
Yeah. Oh no, that's a tough pill to swallow. Super, super hard pill to swallow there.
I found out I had a kid, or I found one of the waitresses at my dad's restaurant sent me an ultrasound and said she was 6 months pregnant. And I was 23, and I had just like got my life back together. I was out there, got it back together. I had set some goals. My biggest goal in life was to give my children more choices than I had, because I grew up on both sides of the tracks. And, she told me she was 6 months pregnant, and it was like a moment, like I became a failure in that moment. Like I'm like, this isn't gonna turn out right, because I'm already not giving my child more choices, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well,
23. It's amazing how dumb we were in the
2.5 years into it, where I was like had the baby 4 days a week, and paying her all kinds of child support. 2.5 years in, and my mom was very, very supportive. I mean, like she said, I'm not going to ask another question, but if you ever want to get a test, I'll be here for you.
Oh, that's awesome to have that kind of support.
I mean, but it always stayed in the back of my head. I'm like,
yeah,
why? In 2.5 years in, I said to this woman, I said, I have tickets to Tom Petty. They're like third or fourth row, the best tickets I've ever had to a concert. I said, you want to go? And she said, no, I'm going with someone else. I was like, wait a minute. Like, we weren't like, I wouldn't
exclusive.
say we were dating.
Yeah,
we weren't exclusive, but we were still hanging out. Anyway, she said that, and she also had 2 other kids with 2 other dads at the time. Mine was the third.
Man.
What it thought was the third. So I said, this is what I said to her. I said, you got love coming from 3 different families. I mean, that's more than most. Like, you got love coming from all over. So, no, I said, why are you bringing another man into this situation? You got love. You got sex.
Yeah.
You got money, because every time you ask for money, I give it to you.
Yeah.
You got all these things in your life. Like, what would you bring a man into this fucked up situation for? Like, why would you bring another man into this? It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
And she said to me, he's special, and he treats me with respect in front of the kids. And it was at that very moment that light bulb went off, and I'm like, holy shit, this bitch is crazy. Because those are things that I like pride myself. And it was like she took these 2 things that she knew would make me angry and said them to me.
Yep.
And I was like, there's something wrong with her.
Yeah. She wanted to twist the narrative. And
she wanted to twist the narrative. And I was like, I called my mom up. I'm like, Mom, I got to get a test. And I took this little girl. I never forget it. Because like when we're walking into the hospital, like she's like singing, Daddy, I love you, and da-da-da-da-da. I mean, it was... She's sitting on my lap because they just swabbed her cheek and they took my blood. And she was like worried about them taking my blood. And these women are looking at me like I'm a creep. Like,
yeah, what are you
biggest
doing?
asshole in the world.
Oh,
like, why are you doing this?
Oh, yeah.
And the mother didn't know I did that. Like, she didn't know that that's what we did on our day together. And the results came back, 99.9. Not yours.
Damn.
And how I reacted to it.
Because you were, what, 25, 26 at the time?
Yeah. And how I reacted. She was working at the car dealership my mom was managing. And how I reacted to it is I called her up. I said, I need you to come outside. And I took the piece of paper and I crumpled up and threw it at her face and told her to fuck off. And I never saw the kid again.
Damn.
Yeah. Like,
how long did it take you? Like,
it took me like 15 years. Like, it was like I was in this circle. The circle was like, I can't be with a woman until I fix the scar, and I can't fix the scar until I have a kid.
Yeah.
So like, I'm like in this circle of like pain.
Yep.
Like
Trauma.
Yeah. Like
exactly.
like you're talking about. Like,
yeah.
Like just looped, like not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Not being able to fix it.
Because I recognize the
drugs. I got into drugs big time. I was a total mess, and yeah. Now, people would always say to me like, because I was like the person that everybody came to talk about goals, and I don't know. I mean, I've always been like focused, right? Like,
right.
And like, how could you do that? Like, how could she was still your daughter, and she's not my daughter.
Yeah,
she's somebody else's daughter.
Yeah,
I hate the mother.
Yeah,
so
she
like,
started treating you with disrespect.
It's not, but it's not even like I hate her mother so much that it wouldn't be productive or healthy for me to be in that relationship with her.
Correct.
Like,
yeah.
Hate was that. But that took me a long time, and it maybe took longer than 15 years. It wasn't. I mean, I was in my probably mid-30s before it. 15
Getting
years.
over it. Yeah,
so
when I was going through
years.
mine, I went to therapy for 3 years straight, once a week for 3 years straight, and that helped a lot. Actually, I was really glad I found that, because when I was going through it at the beginning, I turned to alcohol pretty good, But it never became a problem, thank God, because I got that addictive personality. That's why I like the nicotine as far as like, thank you on pouches, gives me energy and focus. Not sponsored, but
It's a lie.
Yeah, exactly.
I smoked for 30 years. I can tell you that's a lie.
It is. But going through that, it's just amazing how, when you go through some of those hardships like that and just like how long, you don't really recognize it, but like how it just changes you and how long it can actually affect all your decisions for a long period of time. And then,
how those scars affect your relationships.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I've been like so bad at, romantic relationships as far as, with a number of the women that I've dated and stuff and some of the girlfriends I've had.
It's hard to get that trust back.
And exactly. And, which has really limited my growth. And I've dated some incredible women who, kind of look back and I'm like, lost a good one there. But
I'll tell you, like, it really did affect, I think the way that I just made it positive is like young men. Like, how naive to be like, this woman said that she's 100% the mother.
Yeah.
She said she was 100%.
Yeah.
Looked me right in the eyes and said it.
Yeah.
Like, how is that possible? Like, how can you be 100% when you're not? Like, first of all, and about someone's life, about more than one person's lives, all these families and all these kids and all this stuff that goes on, like, I would be interested to know how many kids are actually fathers. I mean, that was a scar that stayed on my brain a long time too. It's still there. Like, how, like, even in marriages, like, how many kids could be somebody else's?
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, it's not like that aren't 100%.
Right. Yeah.
Like, if it's 99.9, if there's a possibility, then which there is, lots of possibilities. I mean, they happen all the time, but
absolutely
not thinking about that. I'm not saying that that's how the world works, but
I'm proud of you, brother. I'm glad you worked through it. That stuff.
It took me a long time.
Oh, it took me such a long time to
I almost
be
went to
comfortable
prison.
to
I
talk
went to
about
prison
it.
on drugs. I was bad. I wasn't never a drug dealer, but I always bought lots of drugs. Like, I mean, because I've always made money. And one night I had a party at my house, and I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was the cops pounding on my door, and nobody was there, and I was on the couch, like, go to the door, and they're like, we need to come in the house. And I'm like, whoa, you're not coming in my house. It was St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day is always a good day.
St. Patrick's Day, well, I was 30, so, I'm 48 now, so 28 years ago.
Yeah, 18 years ago.
18 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no. They're like, well, come outside. I was fucking dumb. I went outside, and they stuck their foot in the door and came in the house.
Yeah, of course.
And they found all the remnants from the party. Or no, at that point, they didn't search my house then. They took me into custody, and they had me in custody for like 6 hours. And I mean, I'm freezing cold. They're asking me these questions over and over, and I'm like, I want to talk to an attorney. They were charging me with accessory to rape because this girl, how this all happened, this girl had sex with some guy, and then she went to the hospital.
Yeah.
And she didn't call it rape, but I guess if you go to the hospital because of something that's related to sex, I mean, I don't know what happened. I really don't. I didn't have anything to do with it. Like, I wasn't there.
Right.
I was in the house, but I wasn't in that part of the house, I guess. And it's a messed up story. But so they kept asking me this. They kept asking me, like, what happened? Why would this happen? And what happened? They're like, she said she was drugged. And I said, she wasn't drugged. She was partying, and it was right there. They were like, oh, what does that mean? And I was like, I got tripped up in the words. And then they're like, okay, we're done with you. They put me in a cell, and they went and searched my house. And, they found all the leftover drugs. And I was facing 30 years.
Damn.
30 years in prison.
Damn.
And I went to jail, and I had never been institutionalized in my whole life. I'd never been under somebody else's care. Like, this is what time you go to bed. This is what time, like the military does that to you. Being institutionalized, I'm not comparing being in jail, but that's what went through my brain is like, no one's ever told me what to do.
Exactly.
Ever.
Yeah.
Like, and if they did, I broke the rules, right?
Yeah. The only people that didn't suffer, during the pandemic and stuff was like, people who've been to jail and people who've been in the military because they're like, we're used to being locked down. Like, this ain't no big deal.
Right.
Right.
So, shortly after, like, I came back and they said that I was supposed to have come in for drug testing. And nobody ever gave me a piece of paper and told me that I needed to do that. They locked me up again. And then they took away my bond. And so I'm sitting in jail. I'm like, I was pretty tough in jail. I'm like, because I've snored since I was young and loud. And I walked in, it was a pot of like 28 guys. And I walked in, I said, look, I snore, and if anybody wakes me up, I'm punching them.
Yeah.
And that's how I introduced myself to everybody. I was like a boss in the cell block. Anyway, so I got this attorney, and I kept telling them, they asked me for the tape. I said, ask them for the tape, get the tape, because I asked them 50 times for an attorney, and they wouldn't let me leave. They wouldn't give me an attorney, they wouldn't let me leave. I kept saying it and saying it and saying it. Now, meanwhile, between there, I went to rehab. Like, in between, when I was on bond, I went to rehab. And then I had lost the respect of every single person in my family. They wouldn't give me $20 because they thought I was going to buy drugs with it. Like, it was like
stigma.
It was
they're
like,
stereotyping
I
you
was
like you're a druggie.
on the very bottom.
Yeah.
Like, where I was buying thousands of dollars worth of drugs, not 20.
Yeah.
Like, I would never do that. Like, it would be dumb.
Yeah.
Like, that's how my head was. But I lost it all. My family, my business, my friends. And the day of court, finally going to court, and I've been in there for like 26 days, and my beard's overgrown, and my jumpsuit's oversized, and my hair's all messed up, and they dismissed the case because they didn't have the tape. The police officers didn't show up. They didn't have the tape.
Didn't record nothing.
Didn't record nothing.
So you went through all that stuff.
I went through all of it. I mean, but I wouldn't take it back. I wouldn't change anything for the world because
Good wake-up call?
It was a great wake-up call. I mean, ultimately what I did was I left. I just left. I just booked.
Good.
I just booked. I went to Florida, and
that's the great thing about America too. Is like you can just reinvent yourself. No matter what you go through, you can reinvent yourself.
I booked town. And I started waiting tables again.
Yeah.
I was a waiter for like 4 or 5 years. 4 or 5 years I was down in South Florida waiting tables, and then I met my ex-wife who lived in Lexington. When I came to Lexington, didn't know anybody, but
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was, man. But I just think about those stories. I mean, talk about a chip or talk about like things that like impact your life. That was one of them.
Well, put you on the right path and stuff like that too. Because it's great when you go through, and you're able to rise above from some of those hardships and stuff like that too, and just kind of, reflect and be like, I've done some dumb stuff. I've done some hard things, and like, yeah, this is really.
But that's what it took me to get me out of the trauma. Like the trauma from the child. I mean, ultimately, like took me to that space. Like I didn't have therapy. Like drugs were my therapy. Like and jail and the threat of prison. But I had accepted. Like in my mind, when I was sitting in jail, like had accepted that I was probably going to do 5 years. Yeah. In my mind, I'm like, I'm going to be in here for 5 years at least. I'm facing 30 years with 2 15-year charges. I'm going to be in here for 5 years at least.
So you already like mentally prepared over those 26 days.
I was mentally prepared. There was at that moment, like in there, I was like, that's when I was able to like come to peace and not like, I was like, okay, my life's going to change. I'm going to make it through this. Everything's going to be fine. It's only going to be 5 years. And I walked in that courthouse and that day, and he's like, when they dismissed that case, it was like, that was when I was able to release all that pain. It was like all the pain went away, and it's like, okay, now I have another chance. Yeah. Now I got to do something right. And it was like the drugs gone, all the stuff. It was like everything like just went away in that moment, and I took it as like.
That's awesome. How does your family celebrate you now? Like everything you've accomplished and all the success?
That's a tough question because they don't. I'm currently in a I don't know, conflict, I guess you call it.
Because I would say that would leave like
my family's a lot of them are in Michigan.
Sour.
I mean, there are some that do. Yeah. Like, I mean, I would think that there are. There's some that celebrate it, but I'm not really there. Yeah. Like the only connection I had to Michigan was my family. Right. And then Northern Michigan is beautiful. But like at this point, it's like since I started my own family.
There's no point.
Like the connection's kind of lost. It's like they have their own families and everybody has their own thing and they don't have time. What I didn't realize, what I've learned to realize is that they didn't have time for me before, but I made time for them. Right. And I also think a big part of it's like family tradition. So as my grandparents died off, there was nothing that was made the time valuable to be connected. Like where they didn't let that go. Like they didn't let the holidays go by without everybody getting together. Right. Yep. But then as people grow and grandparents pass away, it's like, then those traditions are lost, but then it's like people have their own thing going on and they don't have time for your thing. Yeah. In the moment when I start a family and my time becomes more valuable to me, like to the point that I don't have time to deal with that. Well, now I understand where that all came from and like how important those family traditions that my grandparents held are in a family. And especially when you're 6 hours apart, like once that once that connection is gone, it's hard to keep on FaceTime. You know, it's hard to keep that going.
Yeah,
Over
exactly.
the internet, it's not the same. And so, I mean, I think there's several reasons, but you know, someday
That's all right.
someday they'll appreciate me. Like, I'm a good person, just like you said. I mean, that's what I reflect back to. Whenever I have conflict, I go back to like I think about like, yes, I might not have handled that the best, right?
Yeah.
Might have been a little too aggressive. I might have been a little too cold. I might have lacked empathy. But I'm a good person.
Yeah.
I'm a good person, and I'm deep in my heart. I'm out to do good things for people.
Right.
And there's so many people that are out there to do bad things, and so many people that are out. I almost use that as like my way of rising above. Like when you said it, I really connected with that. There's a lot of things you said today that I've connected with, but that was one of them. It's like, I'm a good person. Like, it's a good thing to know about yourself, and it's a good thing to like connect with, because it makes all the rest of it a little easier to deal with. Because like,
because it ain't that
you
hard.
can't break you can't break that part of me, that I'm honest and that I do what I'm supposed to do and that I do things for other people. And you know, like, you can't break that. That's always there, no matter how I react to a situation. I didn't steal from you.
Yeah.
I don't owe you money. I haven't lied to you. You know what I mean? Like, what else? How else could I have betrayed you with my problem-solving skills or with the way I handled something? Like, that can't be enough to outweigh those other things.
Yeah, exactly. And look how well you've risen above all that stuff too. It's good.
There's so
good.
much more in the telling. That's like
that's why I say
that's
like
another thing I want to talk to you about. Like, what is it that, like, I've been really connected with podcasts lately. So I was watching one. Was it a podcast? No, it was Shaun White, the snowboarder.
Yeah.
His series on, it's either Netflix or Amazon or something.
I haven't seen it.
Oh,
I know who Shaun White is though. Yeah.
The guy's a stud. Like, his final Olympics, like, he's won all these gold medals and he's had all these achievements, and he changed, because I was a snowboarder when I was on the hills the first day the ski hill allowed him. I had a snowboard on.
Yeah.
You know, the very first day they were allowed at the ski hill that I grew up around. And so I've always been, but we were always like outcasts. It was always like,
Yeah, kind of like the skateboarders.
it was
and stuff
never
like that.
mainstream, and it was never, I never even conceived that it would like skateboarding and biking, never conceived that it would ever make it to the level that it made it to. But his story, so he was talking about all these achievements, and like, you know, he's got his physical therapist and all these different people that are commentating on how special his life is. And like, one thing that he kept going back to is like, yeah, you won a gold medal at the Olympics. Like, is that, he was like, I always thought that would solve something for me.
Yeah. No.
But then once you do,
then it's on to the next one.
on to next something else. So
Yeah.
what is it that, like, what are you trying to make happen right now? What's the next step for you? Like,
Professionally?
Professionally.
Professionally, I really enjoy growing teams. I really love it. I really do. Even if that means I got to take a pay cut to ensure people on my teams make more money or give them more opportunities, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to make those sacrifices.
Right.
Because at the beginning when I started my business journey, you know, I was chasing the dollar because I had to. I had to put money, I had to put food on the table, I had to provide, had all these bills. And once I got that solidified, once I had a good book of business and things were going, I really enjoyed hiring people, really enjoy having teams, really enjoy leading people. Love giving promotions from within. I get excited when I hear about, or, you know, people on my team talk about going on vacations or getting ready to have kids and things of that nature, or interested in buying like a house. So right now, professionally, I would love to do another acquisition. I'd love to hire a few more people onto the team.
Cool. What acquisition are we talking about? Real estate? Or business?
Yeah, other businesses.
Other businesses.
Yep. Potentially looking to acquiring other businesses.
Did you acquire this?
Nope,
Did you buy this?
This is mine.
Okay.
Yep, this is mine. So I would love to be interested in anybody looking to, you know, maybe not wanting to take on all the load of being a solo operator.
Yeah.
Potentially bringing them on. I would like to work in, you know, Central Kentucky, Louisville, Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati, and get into some of these markets, whether it's through home inspections or radon mitigation or whatever. I just enjoy the growth. Part of it too is I want to just be better personally. So I've been on that path for trying to, as far as like the past 18 months or so, just trying to be a better person and working on my personal development and my mental health and things like that too, and my physical health.
It's really important.
You know, just want to grow a little bit more. I don't think I want to get above 20 people on my teams, and then just have a little bit more flexibility for my personal life is where I want to go professionally. So just get to 20 people, as big as I want to get, I think.
Man, we align on a lot of things.
And that way I can still know everybody to the best of my ability and rise everybody up around me. And I just like leading by example to the best I can, especially with my family and stuff too.
So I've got about 10 questions for you.
Yeah,
I've really enjoyed our conversation, but I want to get down to business because there's some business questions I have for you that I think will help the people I work with and will help the people you work with.
Go for it.
What is the craziest thing you've seen doing a home inspection?
Some of the things I can't talk about.
That's what we want. That's what I want to hear.
Yeah,
Can't you
I could share a little bit.
Bleep it out maybe or something.
So I did have one house, real nice property, and very interesting individual, and they had a very interesting sex room, and in the closet of the sex room, I wasn't even supposed to go in there. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to go in there, but I went in there by accident. They told me later not to go in there, but they didn't know I went in there. And there was definitely sex clothes in there. They were like crimson colored.
Oh, jeez.
So I think these people were into like cutting each other. Oh. So that was kind of wild. The amount of sex toys I've seen in showers is pretty funny as far as still being.
Well, you'd think people would put stuff away.
Yeah, just being strapped up in the shower still. It's just like,
geez.
oh man, it's like, I blush when I see some of that stuff. I'm like, oh man, I'm lacking in that area.
What are some negative things you're seeing on a regular basis? Like, are there some things that stand out?
Yeah, flip houses. Every one of them need to be inspected. Unfortunately, I'm not running into a lot of flip houses that are nicely done.
Really?
A lot of flip houses.
So what shows up on these flip houses that people wouldn't see?
So especially if there's a crawl space, oftentimes I'll typically see like a lot of structural issues. So recently I had one where they try to hide some of the structural issues by covering up some of the wood rot in a few locations in the crawl space. Like knew it was there, like you could feel like how soft the floors were in the middle of the house and then on the foundation walls. So some of those areas were intentionally tried to be covered up. So through adding extra layers to hide it without actually fixing the issue.
Yeah.
So finding that.
It's one thing if you've never been in the crawl space, but it's another thing if you've been in the crawl space and you try to cover something up with.
Yeah. Just like more 2x8s or 2x10s and, sistering things
as opposed
up
to doing it the right way.
Instead of just removing it, taking it out, doing it the right way. I've seen a lot of shoddy electrical work here recently. In addition to that, almost to the point to it's like, hey, it would have been cheaper just to hire a professional. Adding all these junction boxes and all these extra wires and all these materials you bought to do this yourself, like you would have actually saved money if you would have just hired a pro to do it.
Right.
So that's some silliness I'm seeing. Flip houses, yeah, all of them need to be inspected. A lot of flip houses are coming back with a lot of issues. New construction definitely needs to be inspected as well. Common issues I'm finding in new construction, hardy board siding. So the cementa siding, a lot of new construction, even some of these bigger builders, they're not having actual professionals that know how to install the cementous boards on the side.
Okay.
The cuts all got to be sealed. All the penetrations got to be sealed. All the nail heads got to be sealed. There's certain flashing methods and techniques that have to happen. You got to really follow the manufacturer recommendations for the hardy board siding. Otherwise, you're going to have water coming right back into the building envelope.
Okay.
And I've been seeing that a lot on new construction, hardy board siding not installed correctly. In addition to improper flashing on the roofing materials, as far as some of the fascia or some of the trim work, not being flashed properly, so there'll be excessive gaps where you can actually see some of the wood components.
How do you feel about the defense that, well, I didn't know it was supposed to be that way?
Flippers, I get it because there's so many people that are just going to like YouTube and TV and they think they know how to do things correctly. And again, I'm not a code expert or anything of that nature, but like in new construction, like they should know.
Right.
New construction, because those get phase inspections by code experts.
Right.
Right. And that defense of we didn't know, especially on new construction, I don't buy because again, there's a lot of builders and there are some good builders around our area. There's some really good builders I really respect. But then there is a number of builders that just, cutting corners, cutting costs, not enough supervision for the teams that they have when they're general contractors. So new construction, no. Flips, they don't know, I guess.
Yeah, I have a tough time with that. Personal responsibility is one of my top things. Is like, I'm not going to point fingers, I'm going to point thumbs.
Yeah.
What, like a homeowner owns the house. Like, what's a common thing that you see that a homeowner could fix or that they should pay attention to?
Keep the veg away from the house. Too much veg. Some people get carried away with the vegetation as far as like the bushes of trees right near the property. That can cause a lot of issues in a short period of time. I've even had houses with CPVC drainage line, plastic drainage lines, where they planted like a nice birch like right over top of the drainage line. And the house less than 10 years old and the roots have already penetrated the drainage lines, so the cleanouts. So keeping the veg away from the house and then keeping water away from the house. Some of those decisions are easy to make at the very beginning. You know, you're excited about buying a new house. Be intentional and purposeful in the research that you do on the vegetation that you're looking to put around your property, because as big as a canopy is, the root system can be that big or bigger.
How far it needs to be planted from the house.
Yeah, and keep the gutters clean and the downspout 6 to 8 feet away from the house.
I was getting my haircut today, and my barber, I told him that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, and he was like, I can't wait to hear what his answer. I said, I can already tell you, it's drainage.
Yeah.
Like, I know that every house that I've ever bought, the very first thing I do is fix the drainage, and I fix the leaks in the crawl space or in the basement.
Yeah.
Like the very first thing I'm doing, because that's why I'm getting a deal on the house, because the people didn't pay attention to that.
Yep.
It's hurt the house. So that's great advice.
Because it's incredible how quickly, like once you have too much moisture, like around your property or in your property from some of those negligent things, like you'll get environmental hazards like fungal or microbial growth beginning to happen, and staining, and then there could be wood deterioration of some of the building components that you can't even see until the finished materials are removed.
That's great advice. What about real estate agents? What advice do you have for real estate agents?
Just be better communicators. I've been saying this for a long time because I've gotten complaints before because I communicate too much within our processes as far as how we.
I was kind of talking about that this morning.
Yeah.
I asked you if you're because we get you doing a radon system for one of my clients, and I got 2 texts that were the same.
Yeah, you shouldn't have gotten 2. Should have been 1, but it depends how the software's set up. But communication is.
But that's how I didn't tell you what I had. I just said, is that I asked you if it was automated or if it was a person. You said it was automated. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you also said we over communicate because we don't get into problems for that, and I think that's great advice. Like that's the same advice I give. Like I've never once got a complaint from us over communicating the process or over communicating the timeline or over communicating. That's something that I say, like, always end a call and we have somebody under contract with, this is what happens next.
Yeah.
This is what happens next.
Yep.
Like, every conversation, this is what happens next. I love that. So,
nobody's going to complain about over communicating. And the thing, too, like, with the profession of the real estate industry being under attack now over this last couple of years and stuff like that, like, it's incredibly important to rest on our laurels of being ethical in how we do things and how we approach things and operate in an integrous manner. Just because now we have like extra eyes on us because we've had so many bad apples in industry, even in my industries as well. Bad apples just like chasing the dollar instead of chasing, because these are careers. These can be very lucrative careers that can provide a great quality of life, and we can make very insightful and positive impacts on our community if we all operate in an integrous and just in an ethical manner.
I think that's great advice. I think it's a great way to conclude our conversation.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you coming in today.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Bob Safaya, for the time. I appreciate you, sir.
Man.
Yeah.
I feel really good about it. I mean, I think this will provide a lot of value for people. And appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
We'll do
Look
it
forward
soon.
to coming back. Coming back anytime, sir.
All right. Thanks,
Thank you so much.